Hello and welcome to What the Lux with me, Fred Moore.
And me, Anand Sharma.
Together we lead Matter of Form, a design consultancy specialising in brand, digital experience and content. And this is a podcast that calls time on tired ideas of luxury.
Alongside industry luminaries and thought leaders, we explore what truly defines category-leading products and services. I'm delighted on this episode of What the Lux to welcome Helen Brocklebank. Helen, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm so glad that we've made it happen and we get to sit down and have this conversation before we head off to New York together.
It's so nice to have a conversation. It's kind of weird in a way that the conversations that we always have, which are so rich and so engaging and intriguing all the time whenever we manage to sit down over a drink, that we're having it with a microphone in front of us.
Helen, can we just start? Can you tell us a bit about Walpole?
So Walpole is the only business body in the UK for luxury brands, primarily British luxury brands, but they also some international brands that have a big stake in the UK. It has a membership community of 250 businesses. I mean, ones that you would recognise in any corner of the world, from Rolls-Royce, Harrods, Burberry, Alexander McQueen, the Macallan whiskey, those kinds of brands. And then lots and lots and lots of SME who still have really recognisable names. I mean, even globally famous brand like Manolo Blahnik is still relatively small in terms of turnover compared to other categories, but enormous in terms of reach. And Walpole's mission is to protect, promote, and develop those businesses. We do lots of work with government to represent the interests of these absolutely astonishing businesses. We bring people together to learn from each other. We have a little internal motto, which is no one succeeds alone. You're only ever one person away from the person that can really help you, which is, really plays well to the entrepreneurial kind of mindset that you get with British luxury CEOs and brands.
So last night you were at a dinner for Brands of Tomorrow, and that's an initiative that you have to help promote the next generation of luxury. And can you just talk to us a bit about that, the types of things you do and some of the great successes perhaps that we might recognise who've gone through that programme?
I'd love to talk about Brands Tomorrow. I mean, part of Walpole's mandate is to help the British luxury sector grow. And it is a high growth sector. It grew 69% the last 5 years. Its average growth is 11% every year. But within that, we have a specific objective around creating a new pipeline of economic growth for the country from high-end and luxury brands. And so we do that with a program called Brands of Tomorrow. So every year we have an open application process. We take about 100 entries, go through them, select 26 for interview. And then we take 12 brands every year on a program of mentoring and masterclasses, investing the time and the talents of really established luxury leaders into the lives of the kind of new kids on the block, the up and coming brands. And it's 18 years in now.
Wow, 18 years. So who are the
who have been the stars? So I mean, think about the first year we had Bremont, Nightimber, Miller Harris. I mean, so and then later you've had Amelia Wickstead, Orla Brown, Castor, who actually what they took out of the program was that they didn't want to be positioned in the luxury sector. They wanted to go much broader, and now, of course, I think they've been valued at £1 billion. So, but big success. But
there's some real success stories there.
I mean, incredible success. I think the statistic that satisfies me most is that 90% of the brands, more than 150 brands that have been through the program, 90% are still in business. And if we think about the failure rate for early stage brands, I just feel that means that we're doing something right.
I think it also demonstrates that as a country we should be capitalising on our taste making ability, on the fact that we can create brands that perhaps go far further than whatever their balance sheet might demonstrate.
Absolutely. We kind of create incredible impact. And I think it is frustrating, and this top of a conversation with the alumni dinner last night, it's frustrating that it's actually really easy to start a business here. It's relatively easy to scale it to a certain point. But actually, if you want to go a lot a lot further than that. The investment environment in this country doesn't really exist. We're not brilliant in the UK at investing in consumer brands, and really not brilliant at investing in high-end ones. Partly because they scale quite slowly, so they deliver really, really, really good value over time, but they're not necessarily that kind of three-year shooting star that many investment houses are looking for.
Combination slightly of our culture. We're not a commercial,
I think we are a really commercial culture. I think we don't often admit it to ourselves how commercial we are. We like to create beautiful things and then sell them to people who will love them. I mean, what better compliment is it that you've done something good than somebody wants to buy it?
I think we make them so beautiful people can't help but buy them, so we don't have to sell them. Can you just talk about your personal journey that led you to Walpole?
I mean, a great stroke of good fortune. What can I say? The stars aligned. So most of my career I spent working in publishing. So and particularly in glossy luxury magazines like Harper's Bazaar and Esquire. And it was there that I really got to know the brands. I was absolutely almost insanely fascinated by the workings of luxury. What was it that made something so valuable to somebody? What makes us love these beautiful things? So Harper's Bazaar was of course all about the international brands, all the kind of Vuittons and Chanels and Dior's and all that kind of stuff. But actually Esquire was really focused on UK luxury, because it's British luxury has a real grounding in stuff that men like. It's really, really good on cars. Actually automotive is the biggest luxury category in the UK. Whiskies and menswear. I mean, the Savile Row suit. We invented the suit in this country. The beautiful handmade Northamptonshire shoe. The tie. That whole kind of James Bond look that is just world famous as the kind of British look. And that gave me a fascination and a love of it, and a knowledge as well about it. And then I ran my own business for a few years. I'd always wanted to run my own business. I discovered by running it that I didn't like running my own business, but it was doing all right with a content agency. And so anyway, then I got a call out of nowhere from the new chairman of Walpole, who just Michael Ward, who's still the chairman of Walpole, who runs Harrods, recently been appointed, and they were looking for a new CEO of Walpole to take to the next level, and they wanted somebody that had a deep understanding of luxury and had also run their own small business, which was luckily me.
How does the publishing side impact how you think about brand storytelling and your work?
I think that's a really great question, because that has been so useful to me. It was almost like every single thing I've ever done in my career was an apprenticeship for this job, because I was really frustrated by the fact that the story of British luxury, which was so fascinating to me, was just not told, in the newspapers or in the kind of pages of the magazine. It was just kind of a little bit overlooked, partly because they were not huge advertisers, I think. So I thought, well, actually, this organisation that represents this sector, let's tell those stories ourselves. So the first thing I did when I arrived at Walpole was to just build some really, really, really strong content channels to completely redo the website, so that we could start to tell the stories of the brand, because I felt it was just a great way of saying, putting on the map how strong collectively this sector is, if we were just to do something that a trade association doesn't normally do, but would be to tell, to do storytelling on a daily basis. That really worked. It was also because, quite frankly, I had literally no idea what I was doing on my first day. I'd never been a CEO before. I'd run my own business. I'd run a big division of somebody else's global business, but I'd never been a CEO before. And I thought, right, I'm just going to, whilst I'm working out what I'm going to do, this is terribly frank, isn't it? Very candid. I didn't know what I was doing my first day.
It's not really a job that necessarily has a spec. It's a job that defines specs.
You have to work it out. So I bought myself a great deal of time by going to work out what it was that I really wanted to do, because I am a kind of I'm a good strategic thinker, so I knew that I had a clear idea what I wanted to do. I needed a little time to work out how I was going to do it. So anyway, so I went hard in on content to begin. But I think that was an incredibly lucky and really good decision, early decision to make, because that storytelling part of what Walpole does is part of its great strength.
Storytelling is everything in this age of abundance that we live in. It's a story that imbues something with meaning. And I think storytelling, people talk about storytelling sometimes, you get a bit desensitized, you just, everything of course is a story, but great storytelling that follows an arc, that has a point of tension and release, that, isn't afraid to draw you into something that actually requires a level of attention. That's really what makes something valuable and allows it to be adopted as a symbol of a thing.
Yeah, and it is so rich with stories, the sector. I mean, just going up to Northampton and going into one of the other church's factory there and talking to the people that have been making those beautiful shoes since they left school. And it's just that passion and love and craftsmanship and skill and just kind of obsession with making something incredibly perfect for somebody that will then love it forever. That, in itself is just a really beautiful human story.
I guess you go into these factories and these, heritage businesses, and you speak to people who've been there for 20 years. And that's just so rare these days, for people to just live and breathe the brand.
I think because what I see in British luxury brands is a commitment to the local community. I think there's a real responsibility that comes with being the main business in that area, whether you're Mulberry and Chilcompton in Somerset or you're Johnsons of Elgin in kind of both Hawick and Elgin. These are people that you've grown up with. They're your family. Your workforce might, people in. When I went to Mulberry, there was a lady. He'd been working there for 45 years, and then she went and got her daughter, and then her daughter went to get her granddaughter, and it was a proper family business. And I just, and I thought
they were all working there.
They were all working there.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I bet it's what I love about the brands that I work with. I see a real sensibility of that responsibility of kind of, look, this is not somebody's job, this is their life, and it's the life and fabric of this local area. And I find that endlessly compelling. And kind of, if I've got a wee private mission in Walpole, it's to just keep putting those stories out there.
You've been quoted before as saying that you think good leadership is a craft, not an art.
Yes, I would very much stand by my words on that. I think it is a craft. A craft is iterative. Your craft, you achieve a level of mastery, but that mastery only comes through incessant practice. And an art is just, something you can kind of casually be good at, I think. You just turn up one day and paint the Sistine Chapel.
How do you sharpen the saw on it?
I think it's just, you've just got to keep on practice and then be hard on yourself as well, to ask yourself what went right, what went wrong, and to have a kind of bit of introspection so that you do it better next time.
We've spoken about coaching and its impact, positive impact before. I have a belief that a great leader is a coach, but also any great leader could do well by having a coach and being held accountable, often where there isn't anyone to hold you accountable. How have you found coaching to be a benefit to how you think about the world and organise your business life?
I think the coaching, being a coach as a leader is really useful, because the secret to leadership as opposed to management is that you are there to set the objective, to set the course, to kind of set the culture, but you're not there to do somebody else's job for them. And actually that is a kind of coaching model. Are you asking the right questions? What is it that's, given the framework of what we're trying to achieve here, what are you as somebody that's in the team what are you trying to achieve? What are the objectives you're setting yourself? How are you thinking about it? So that, I think that's an important framework. And I think the times when I've been successful in my job, I have remembered that's how to be a successful leader. And the times when I've been really unsuccessful is when I have tinkered around with somebody's job for them and kind of over-egged the management pudding and forgotten coach, and been over-directive. I've had a number of different coaches in my time, and I think that any leader will tell you that the cliche is that it's a lonely job, heavy as the head that wears the crown. That you don't have anybody to kind of be your sounding board, to kind of hold you to account a bit, to ask you the kind of the questions that you might be asking your team in that coaching model.
I find it astonishing how people can really flounder in the face of some incredibly basic questions.
Yeah, because they don't, they're uncomfortable questions. And I think a good executive coach, if you have one, if you're a CEO, is somebody that asks you those uncomfortable questions that you are not prepared to ask yourself, and then won't let you off the hook. So the coach you don't want is somebody that goes, "You're great." You don't want a cheerleader.
No, definitely not.
You want somebody that will ask you the question that you've somewhere in your head you have been asking yourself, but you haven't been prepared to hear.
Helen, to build on the theme of cheerleading, you've spoken in the past about cheerleading the role of Britain and British luxury on a global stage. Walpole have been doing that for 30 years.
I think it might be 33 this year. 1992 it started. Yeah, maybe 33 this year.
That's a long...
it's a long old time.
That's a long time. How would you describe the sort of bigger story of British luxury and its position on the global stage?
It's, British luxury is quantifiable soft power. It's the kind of band T-shirt of the fantastic gig of the creative industries, and and everything else from the royal family to the BBC, to the kind of heritage and history and all those kinds of things that we and the diversity as well that we put in the big box marked British soft power. And I think the really important role that luxury goods play is that wherever you are in the world, if you're going to the Burberry shop and trying on a heritage trench coat, you're engaging with a perception of the UK as a country capable of doing something beautiful and creative and engaging, and manufactured at incredibly high quality. And if you want to dive further, then you've got that story about the technical breakthrough that Thomas Burberry made, or just all the other people. I think soft power is really important. I think the role of things that are kind of hard soft power, like the merch, the things that you can buy, the souvenirs, if you like, are super important, because then you've got something tangible in your home. But it is all wrapped up in one massive gift box. So everybody around the world has in some way heard of James Bond, which, we always talk about him as, British luxury's most muscular pitchman, because he's out there giving an impression of this country as something that's really got its finger on the pulse of keeping the world safe, goes out to battle for people, and also looks very smart and drinks martinis whilst doing it.
I think Britain, is a centre of creative excellence and has collectively a great eye and a sense of design and taste. And I find myself frustrated. I don't feel the country doubles down on that as a sense of national positioning enough.
I completely agree. We are absolutely hopeless as a country at bigging ourselves up. You really see this when you go off as well, and when we'll see each other in a few weeks in the US. That if we saw us as other people see us, we would perhaps be a little bit more bold about cheerleading the good, the things that we're really good at, rather than being modest. There is a kind of self-deprecation to the British culture that doesn't play at all in other countries. You can't be self-deprecating in the US because people just think you don't care, or you don't love what you're doing, or there's a kind of, the modesty doesn't really work. I also think there's because there is a kind of British cultural thing about always in luxury, particularly getting on to the next thing. This thing is really good, but what's the next thing? How can I make it better? You perhaps don't stop to appreciate what you've got. I really saw this when we launched the Sustainability Manifesto, and we were kind of talking to some of the brands about sustainability and finding out that they'd just been really quietly doing things that we would now call a circular economy for 200 years. Or Johnson's of Elgin would be they've had a mending service and they keep threads from every single colour of cashmere jumper they've ever made, ever. And so if you send say you've got your granny's pullover from 1950 and it's got a moth hole in it and you're wearing it, you can send it back to, and they've just always done that. So, and other luxury brands in other countries were really shouting about that kind of repair service, and yet it always existed. Or Mulberry having kept pretty much since they launched in the early 70s a library of leathers and kind of the hardware and things, so that your bag could always be refurbished and always be repaired, no matter how old it was. I mean, sorry, this is going off on some kind of bit of random tangent. I think the brands don't perhaps understand how extraordinary and amazing that is. They perhaps don't always have the time, because they're smaller businesses and working, flat out all the time, to pause and kind of take the lid off that story.
You forget how uncommon that stuff is as well.
But you really forget, because it is very, very common within British luxury. And I think that's interesting. So until you kind of sense check it a bit by going, let's have a look what other people are doing, and discover that it's not normal, it's really special. So in a way, that I think that's part of what Walpole tries to do with its members, to just go, you're too modest to have to be boasting. You think it's boasting. I'm just going to do that for you because I think you're incredible for the following reasons, and I'm going to go and tell a collective story about your collective fabulousness. And I've got no shame. I'll be there on a stage going, honestly, you need to hear about this. This is fantastic.
I just like the idea of buying into a product for life and feeling that there's just a service around that product that will allow me to repair and, have that thing that I hold dear without it just disintegrating, and we live in such a here today, gone tomorrow world. And, it's an obvious thing to say, but the greatest form of sustainability is durability, but also the psychology of feeling that you're spending money because you've spent a large amount of money, holding that thing dear.
Yeah, it should be a precious thing. And also, if you're not seeing it as something that should last forever, then how are you being respectful to the people whose livelihood it is to make that thing at the most extraordinary quality of making? I think it's there's somebody having been to all to the manufacturing facilities, which is the posh word for factory, by the way. Luxury for factory is manufacturing facility. But going and meeting the craftspeople and the workforce, I think you've put your whole life into making this thing exceptional. I need to kind of really respect that by loving it forever. You've made it to last. And I mean, Hermes always goes around saying, luxury is that which can be repaired. And I think that's true. It should be durable. We live in a disposable world. Do not dispose of these beautiful things. They're made forever.
What are your views on the differences in luxury in the US and the UK, seeing as we're sort of on this theme?
Well, 70% of global luxury is Anglo-European, so it's very, very much a kind of an industry that belongs to our continent. And you have pockets of high end in other parts of the world, but it really is a kind of European thing. You see that when the most valuable company that we have in our continent is LVMH. It's not big pharma or big tech or big finance. It's a luxury company. I like Ralph Lauren. I mean, I think it's great. I love the co-opting as well of that kind of Gatsby world of kind of creating a sense of history and kind of image building that is deeply nostalgic to if you're in the US, kind of it harkens back to the old country, all those kinds of things. You're creating history in a country where history is relatively recent. You think of that cliche, 100 miles is a long way in the UK, and 100 years is a long time in the US. Things like creme de la mer or some of the beauty products. So it's or Tiffany, now bought by LVMH. You have got these really beautiful individual examples, and I think that's kind of amazing.
What qualifies a company as a luxury? But is Apple a luxury brand?
No, Apple is expensive, and I think expensive is the opposite of luxury. And that's back to your point about its durability is really important. I mean, luxury should not really have inbuilt obsolescence, which Apple innately does. You've always got a new phone coming around. I mean, Apple is amazing, beautifully designed, gorgeous, all that kind of stuff. I mean, big respect to Apple, but it's not, it's not luxury. Something that is, yeah, it is intangible. It's really hard to define. We have a technical definition of it, which I won't bore you with now because it's 6 really, really technical things. But they're all luxury brands have in common. I mean, so things like creativity and craftsmanship at the less technical end, and sustainability, because that is a hallmark of a business that that is dedicated to doing the right thing, or IP and brand. So there's some of those things, but it is maybe we should make our own definition of luxury. How would you define it?
Well, I mean, you know that I'm big on this notion of timelessness, and I've always defined in my mind luxury as a company that sees design as a point of competitive advantage, which is a very obvious, but I actually think worth saying. Great design for me is the starting point of what has led me to the world of luxury unintentionally. The second is founding spirit. So we spoke about some of the stories of the innovative human beings who've driven these luxury brands, and I think that personal story is very important to me. That how that spirit then is used as a lens on the world today. That for me is timeless because it's inherently flexible. And then long-term thinking is very, very important, I think. That is in a world that's become very, very, a bit here today, gone tomorrow. Let's put it like that. I think actually taking a long-term view is really important. And so luxury for me is sort of those things, but it's different for everyone, and that's the way in which we've, as a business, has chosen to define luxury, and then wrap that into this idea of timelessness. But that's luxury for me, I think.
It has the luxury industry has different geographical kind of connotations too, or structures. I spend a lot of time with my colleagues at Committee Colbert in Paris, who is the Walpole over in France, or in Altagamma in Italy. And those markets are quite different. You think about French luxury; it's very haute luxury, isn't it? It's all about it's kind of art for art's sake. It's incredibly beautiful things. It's mostly personal luxury goods. So kind of very focused on fashion and beauty. Where British luxury is, there's something kind of appealingly democratic about it. It's I think from a Walpole point of view, we believe that luxury should be for everybody. You might not be the billionaire who's got a Rolls Royce that's buying a cask of some extraordinary single malt whiskey at auction that is the rarest single malt ever made, and it's millions of pounds. But you might be somebody that absolutely loves whiskey and you love the stories and you're into it, and you have a bottle at Christmas of, I don't know, the Macallan 12-year-old or something like that, or a beautiful Glenfiddich or a Balvenie, and that's £60. It's not about the price tag. 60 to £80, whatever. It's a Christmas present kind of buy. Or the luxury of taking your mum's dream might have been to go to Claridge's for tea, and then it's her 80th birthday and you take her there. These things are, luxury is about a treat, or just I don't know. You love tea bags. Well, you could go to, we all love a cup of tea. You could buy some nice tea pegs from Sainsbury's, bung it in your trolley, think nothing of it. Or you can pop into Fortnum and Mason and you can speak to being a beautiful place with extraordinary history, 1707 to the present day and beyond, and have an incredible conversation with one of their tea people. And then the tea bags are not that much more expensive than tea pigs, but you've had an extraordinary experience and it's told you who you are as a person. It's made you feel special and rewarded and cherished and loved.
Yeah, it's like doing something for yourself or for someone else that beckons you to slow down and take notice, and by doing those things create more meaning in that.
Maybe it's something as simple as joy. Luxury brings you joy. So if you're at the pointy end of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you've got your shelter, you've got enough to eat. You can start making art, or you can start appreciating little things that make you feel good to be alive.
It feels like Britain is a brilliant place to build brand equity, and America is perhaps a great place to realise commercial opportunity. Would you agree with that?
Well, I wasn't thinking about great podcasts. I was listening to one call that looked at the history of LVMH and how Bernard Arnault started off building our continent's most valuable company, and he took those kind of those founder values and looked at companies that had great founders. I mean, Dior's a good example, Vuitton's a good example, but because he'd worked in the US in kind of the kind of financial part of it, which is acquiring slightly dead companies and then chopping them up and reselling the bits. He thought, I'm just going to acquire slightly dead companies. I'm not going to sell the bits. I'm going to chop them up into their component parts and then make them better. So he used the great strengths of those two continents to create a massive empire. And maybe there's a lesson there for everyone. We can learn a lot from other countries.
Are there things that worry you about the relationship we have at the moment with the US?
I mean, we are super worried about tariffs because nobody wins in a trade war, and we know that when there was a big tariff regime that was imposed on luxury goods as the result of a dispute about aeroplane parts, kind of Airbus Boeing dispute, and luxury. Not just British luxury, but kind of luxury across Europe, was the collateral damage in that, and it cost the Scotch whisky industry 600 million quid, and it was a trade war that lasted 2019 to 2021. So the damage is really severe to industries that employ a lot of people, and my concern is that anything that impacts British luxury, it's a sector that supports nearly 500,000 jobs. I know any threat on whatever horizon that could impinge upon these companies' ability to keep on employing those nearly 500,000 or supporting those nearly 500,000 people really, really keeps me awake at night. I think the other thing about tariffs is they tend to becoming really bad value for the US consumer. But tariffs aside, I mean, I think it's just we have been living for a number of years in a very uncertain, unpredictable geopolitical environment. Whether it's Brexit or whether it's the impact of COVID or the energy crisis or the Russia-Ukraine war or Gaza. I mean, there's something new all the time, and I think if you are the leader of any business, you need to be much, much more plugged into the threats that are not of your own making, and try and work out how you're going to respond to it, and ensure that you've got the resilience hard baked into your business.
The resilience, COVID doesn't seem, well, it seems like eons ago actually, but it actually wasn't that long ago. And God, if that created resilience within every business leader, I don't know. Well, everyone, to be honest.
Everybody.
I don't know what more it would take. British luxury's got a really strong reputation globally. How could we better harness that as part of our own identity?
I think there's something to be said for that thing about trying to work out how other people see us. If we're looking at, I don't know, back to the US, it's the single biggest market for British luxury goods. It's North America's nearly a quarter of all of our exports. So maybe we need to spend a bit of navel gazing time, or maybe spend a bit of money working out what it is that really distilling what the American customer loves about the UK. We know some basic things. We know that there's a great love and respect for the royal family and for the kind of aristocracy and those kinds of things. And we've got little bits of data that hover around that. Like we know if the Princess of Wales wears something, then the American customer is 38% more likely to buy it. I kind of love that fact. It's like, she's just what a great bit of soft power that is. Just show up in a nice pair of shoes and a coat and everybody's going to buy it. Brilliant. So I think we have to stop taking ourselves for granted a bit, and I think have the humility to go to find out what bits of what we've got are most appealing, and then lean really, really heavily into it. Stop trying to be everything to everyone. There was a kind of UK tourism campaign which was about the virtues of a cup of tea. I mean, I just don't think that's the most interesting thing about coming to the UK or buying something from the UK.
You did a study, didn't you, with Bain on the role of tourism in recovering our economy?
I mean, it was what we found out from that study was that we are we have a massive natural advantage in this country, I think, for high value tourism. And is defined by people who stay in 5-star hotels, essentially, or equivalent. That's worth £30 billion to the UK economy. And that's 10 billion ahead of France and of Italy. And the really interesting thing about that is for every pound spent by one of those customers in a 5-star hotel, £8 is spent in the local economy. So I think it's really tempting to look at luxury as this slightly frivolous industry, and yet it delivers such extraordinary economic impact. The benefits of not just what's that kind of headline number of 81 billion, but then the benefits to employment, to the reputation of the country.
I've noticed over my tenure in luxury a shift from products to experiences. It's well discussed, and I wondered from where you were sitting, your thoughts on that change, because it does feel that the things that we bought that were objects have perhaps been replaced by experiences that we wear on our social media that represent, that have that same sort of, we can sort of immortalize basically an experience and turn it into something that becomes a symbol of how we felt in that moment. It's almost like we're buying experiences and putting them on our shelf.
I know.
And by the way, I
Exactly.
reserve comment on whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
I mean, you're creating memories, aren't you? But even if it's a product, the nice thing about the product in that context is that it's a constant reminder it should be a constant reminder of a unforgettable experience. Because if you've gone into that shop I don't know, you say you've gone into Boodles on Sloane Street because you've always loved the rain dance ring, which is a beautiful, beautiful, iconic piece of design. It's in the V&A. Half of British luxury brands that create something are in the permanent collection of the V&A. Fun fact. Anyway, you go in there because you've seen it in the V&A's permanent collection. It's a beautiful, iconic piece of jewelry. You've just got, you've got a great promotion at work, whatever it happens to be, and you're going to treat yourself. And then your experience in store is great. So I think the pressure is on for people who sell products rather than experience to make the store experience absolutely insanely beautiful. The prompt for purchase will be potentially some kind of reward thing in the consumer, but you need to build, your responsibility is to build on that. So I think for retailers, they need to see themselves no longer really in the retail business, but also in the experience business.
provocation we ask of many of the product companies who come to work with us is, what if there was no product? How would you define the rest of the customer experience or client experience so that it almost stood up on its own feet without there necessarily being a product? And repeatedly, it's been shown that people care deeply about the before and after. And to our point around storytelling, when you're buying into a product, you're buying a story that says something about who you are, and you're buying into someone else's story that you can hold dear to yourself. And look, there are whole industries, of unboxing videos. There's a reason for that. Anticipation. When you love something, you buy into, you want more from it. You want all the ancillary things that sit around it.
Yeah, I think the store needs to be reimagined, and actually often is reimagined as a kind of brand world. This is not necessarily a new thing. I think I've been thinking about a brand that has totally bucked the kind of global luxury recalibration, which is Hermes, which was, I think, their Q4 results were nearly 18% up. But they've consistently had that attitude. So I remember going to Hermes because I really liked it, but I was just a junior bod at Harper's Bazaar. I had no money. I just really loved the idea of Hermes and I wanted to go and see their stuff. And I wandered into the Bond Street store and they treated me like an absolute, like I was a person that could have bought a Birkin. And this lady kind of took all the scarves out and showed me. She talked to me all about how things were made. I mean, it was just a very beautiful storytelling experience. And I think I even said up front, I can't buy anything. I'm just here to admire everything. I really want to learn. And she spent about half an hour with me. And then she took out from under the counter this little box of cards, which I've still got, about how to tie a scarf. And then subsequently, I have a number of scarves from Hermes because I've got rich and my husband's been much more generous than he was able to be back then. And I've other bits and pieces that don't have a Birkin, but that's fine. And I thought that was just that's a really important story in luxury, that investment in somebody's experience with you, because I then that's 25 years ago probably, and I've just told everybody about that because it meant a lot to me that somebody would take me into this beautiful world and explain to me why it was so beautiful.
Are there any other niche brands who have store experiences that you just love?
Well, I really, really love going to Catherine Sargent. So she was the very, very first master cutter on Savile Row. So in 250 odd years of Savile Row Bespokes history, they'd never had a female master cutter, a female master tailor, and she was the first. Anyway, she's now got 2 beautiful stores, one near Jermyn Street on Ryder Street and one in Edinburgh. And you go in there, and just the time you spend. I mean, I think that's your point about kind of time and experience and those things. And the place itself is amazing. You have a look at where things are made. You see everybody's patterns up there. She'll talk to you about the craft. If you then decide to have something made, the whole experience of kind of going back for fittings. So I think as a brand, your responsibility is to work out what your brand world is, what your brand DNA is, to tell that story beautifully and not to be afraid of continually telling it, no matter how often you've seen that customer. And then to bring somebody into your world. And in a way, the transaction is the last thing you should be thinking about. This is not a Tinder date. This is not a kind of, exchanging of money for goods. Well, I mean, who knows? But it's a kind of marriage. So how do you make somebody fall in love with you when they're 15 or whatever, and then knowing that they may not buy the car until they're 60? I mean, that's an investment.
What do you think? Are you excited about the future of British luxury?
I'm really excited about it. I think because despite the fact that the world is a kind of scary place right now, or maybe because of the world as being a scary place right now, I just see businesses that are strong, ambitious, creative, determined to create extraordinary experiences and things for their customers, just bring some joy into people's world. And also who have that kind of bloody mindedness we talked about earlier, where they, come what may, they will just continue to deliver it. Look at a brand like Lock & Co Hatters. They were founded in 1676. It's still in the same family's hands. They've still got the same little shop on St. James's. It's like Hogwarts going in there. It's amazing. And they, so 100 years before the American independence, they were busy making hats for people, and they're still doing it, and I think they'll still do it forever. So yes, I'm excited, and the economic forecast is also really strong. I think in the next 5 years, the sector should have gone from 81 billion to 125 billion, which would put us at the same value as life sciences is now.
If you could change something, what would you change?
I would change the fact that British luxury is the great unsung hero of the UK economy. That frustrates me every day, because I see the very, very best of this country in every single one of those brands that I have something to deal with, and the way that they, the things that they produce, the experiences they have, the way they treat their teams, they develop their people, the impact they have all around the world. I think this is phenomenal, and I think the government particularly should be lionising this and garlanding people in laurel wreaths and not just perhaps being a little bit complacent.
What worries you about the world that we're leaving our kids?
Where should we start on that? Should we just get going?
It's just like another podcast in its own right, isn't it?
It's another podcast in its own right. I'm actually really hopeful for the future. I kind of look at my kids are Gen Z, and I've got a a couple of really fab Gen Z people in my team. They will make the world work. They are optimistic and entrepreneurial and hopeful. Lots of stuff in the paper about they're the most depressed generation in the whole world and social media is ruining them. They're really interested in analog as well as digital. I think that's quite cool. I think they're going to sort it out. I think we may well have a few tricky years ahead of us, but I feel unbelievably optimistic about the future when I meet anybody who is in that kind of Gen Z age group.
I also feel that luxury is a conduit into some of the really positive things in this world that we've optimized away. I think luxury holds a really important role that goes beyond whatever this sort of dusty definition of luxury people might immediately think of when they think of luxury.
Because I think it reminds you that joy and beauty is other things that live on in the world. And I also think in a geopolitical, amidst a lot of geopolitical gloominess, if you buy something from somebody else's country and you really love it, it's actually much harder to go to war with them. So, so the kind of soft power of strong trade is really important. And the fact that 70% of what's produced in British luxury is destined for overseas markets makes me feel that every single product, whether it's a Church's shoe, a Burberry trench coat, or an Aston Martin, or a bottle of whiskey, is just a little emissary of goodwill that reminds people why we shouldn't fight.
That's a lovely thought. If you had to give up your job tomorrow and let's just say totally change industry, just for to make the question a bit harder specifically for you, what would you do?
I would be in my bedroom writing my great unfinished novel.
The great unfinished novel that I look forward to reading the great unfinished novel, Helen.
I've started it.
You have or you haven't?
No, I have.
You have.
I've already written one. I'm on novel 2. I mean, I will be the world's most unpublished novelist at some point if I keep on going the way I am. But yeah, it's this current one is a comedy folk horror that's somewhere between Cold Comfort Farm and The Wicker Man.
Okay, wow. Helen, it's been a joy. Thank you so much for doing What the Lux.
Oh, what an absolute treat. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening. This has been What the Lux. You can find us on socials at @MatchReform and drop us any questions or comments on Twitter using the hashtag #WhatTheLux. Or if you're a luxury brand looking for strategy and design that goes beyond the banal, get in touch via hello@matchreform.com and chat to one of our consultants.